Imagine this. You've been cast aside, rejected by the most powerful council in the galaxy. Your voice, once thought to be valuable, is now nothing more than a whisper in the void. For eons, the galaxy has been ruled by a council of elites. The same council that told you and your people, you are not worthy. You have no place in the galaxy's future. Now, what if, in the blink of an eye, everything changed? What if the very species that was once thrown out, humiliated and forgotten suddenly had the power to rewrite the rules of the entire galaxy? It's not science fiction. This is the story of humanity. Once regarded as a simple, insignificant species in the grand expanse of the universe, humans found themselves at the mercy of galactic powers far beyond their understanding. The Galactic Council, the ruling body of the universe, thought they were nothing more than a blip on the radar of intergalactic politics. They tossed humanity out, ignoring their ideas, dismissing their pleas for justice and equality. But what they didn't know, what no one could have predicted, was that humanity would not be crushed. Instead, they would rise from the ashes of their rejection, fueled by something that no other species could claim, a burning, unrelenting will to survive. And in their struggle, they would find that they had the power to shape the galaxy in ways no one could ever imagine. Thrown out by the very council that claimed to be the guardians of the galaxy, humanity now found itself with one simple, terrifying choice: fight or be erased forever. And fight they did, not just for survival, but to reshape the laws of the universe itself. You see, humanity had something that the council didn't expect: the ability to change the game, and that's exactly what they did. They didn't just defeat their enemies. They changed the very rules that had held the galaxy together for millennia. So what happens when a species ignored and rejected is finally given the chance to determine the fate of the galaxy? Well, humanity didn't just play the game, they rewrote it, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Council's dismissal of humanity. For centuries, the galaxy was governed by the Galactic Council, a powerful coalition of ancient species, each with their own agendas, rivalries, and ambitions. The Council's power was unchallenged. They controlled the laws, the resources, and the future of every planet, moon, and species within their reach. To be included in the Council was the ultimate privilege. To sit at the table was to be recognized as a force that mattered in the universe. And yet, when humanity arrived on the galactic stage, it was nothing more than a ripple in the Council's serene, ordered existence. Earth was a small young planet at the edge of the known galaxy. Humanity, though resourceful and filled with ambition, had never been seen as a serious threat, until they dared to offer their voice to the decision-makers. At first, humanity was welcomed. Their technological advancements, though primitive, compared to the ancient species of the galaxy, were intriguing. They had an incredible ability to adapt, innovate, and think outside the box, but that was their problem. Humanity didn't just want to be part of the system. They wanted to change it. The Council, comprised of species that had ruled for millennia, wasn't ready for that. They saw humanity's innovations as disruptive. The proposals humanity brought forward weren't just ideas for minor improvements. They were radical, reforms that would challenge the long-standing balance of power that had kept the galaxy in check for so long. And so, at first, the Council ignored humanity. They dismissed their ideas as the naive ramblings of a species that didn't fully understand the intricacies of galactic diplomacy and law. Humanity's passionate calls for a more equitable system were simply brushed aside. They were told time and again that they were too young, too inexperienced, and too reckless to have a meaningful voice in galactic matters. But humanity didn't stop. They kept pushing for change, for a seat at the table. And that's when the real problem began. The council grew fearful. Humanity's ideas weren't just about better trade agreements or enhanced technology. They were about challenging the very structure of the galactic order. The council feared what would happen if humanity's influence grew stronger. What if their bold ideas caught on? What if the other species in the galaxy started listening to them? What if the long-established powers were forced to relinquish their dominance? In a meeting that would go down in history, the council finally made their move. Humanity was invited to speak before the Galactic Council once more. But this time, it wasn't to be part of the conversation. The moment President Sofia Mendoza and the human delegation arrived, they knew something was different. The atmosphere in the chamber was tense. The usual formalities were absent. There was no welcoming handshake, no politeness, no sense of inclusion. Instead, the council's decision was swift and brutal. Humanity's proposals were rejected outright. The leaders of the most powerful species in the galaxy declared that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed full participation in galactic governance. Their radical ideas were too unpredictable. Their vision for a more egalitarian future was viewed as a direct threat to the stability of the galaxy. The council had made its decision. Humanity, despite its potential, was deemed unworthy. They were told to go back to their corner of the galaxy and continue their primitive existence. They would not be allowed a voice in the future of the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity was nothing more than a blip in the grand order of things. But what the council failed to understand was this. By throwing humanity out, they had ignited a fire that would burn brighter than they ever expected. Humanity's rejection wasn't a defeat. It was the beginning of something much greater. For the first time, humanity understood that their destiny wasn't tied to the approval of the council. They didn't need the council's permission to shape the galaxy. They would do it themselves. Rejected, humiliated, and banished, humanity was about to prove just how wrong the council had been. The rise of humanity's power rejected by the council but not broken, humanity's spirit burned brighter than ever. What was once a species isolated at the fringe of galactic affairs now found themselves at the center of a movement, a revolution. A revolution not just to survive, but to reshape the very fabric of the galaxy itself. The council had thought that casting humanity aside would extinguish their fire, but instead, it had fueled it. The rejection wasn't just a setback, it was a call to arms. Humanity could no longer afford to beg for a seat at the table. They would build their own. It started quietly, almost unnoticed at first. Small diplomatic missions to nearby, lesser-known species began to build momentum. Humanity reached out to those who, like them, had been dismissed or oppressed by the council. The Krenari, a race of peaceful explorers, had always been kept in the council's shadow. The Terralites, a technologically advanced species, had been ignored in favor of older, more powerful races, and the Krithari, once a mighty military force, had been reduced to a mere memory in the eyes of the council. These were the species humanity now sought to ally with. The mission was simple: unity. Humanity had something the council had overlooked: the ability to inspire change, the power to unite disparate factions against a common enemy. It wasn't just about military strength, it was about a shared vision for the future. A future where no species was dismissed or silenced. Where the council's outdated laws could be reimagined, and the galaxy could finally operate on the principles of equality, fairness, and cooperation. Humanity began to quietly assemble its own fleet, not just of human ships, but of allied ships. A coalition of species who had long been oppressed by the council's rule now came together under humanity's banner. They shared a common cause: to challenge the old powers and create a galaxy where they would no longer be ignored. The first few months were spent in the shadows, gathering strength, establishing alliances, and building trust. Humanity didn't need to rush. They understood the importance of patience. They knew that every step, every action, every agreement made in the dark would eventually come to light. Meanwhile, in the heart of the council, things were beginning to unravel. For centuries, the galaxy had followed the old ways, ruled by ancient species who had been in power for millennia. They were proud, stubborn, and reluctant to change. But humanity's defiance had set something in motion. Their ideas, their determination, their courage to challenge the norm. It was beginning to stir something deep in the council's halls. General Lucas Duval, once a leader of humanity's small military factions, was now at the forefront of the new resistance. With his military experience and strategic mind, Duval became the rallying point for the growing alliance. Humanity's military, though small, was quickly evolving. They had the advantage of innovation. While the Archons, the Zinthar, and other council-backed powers relied on centuries-old technologies, humanity was able to create new solutions that no one had ever considered. It was in these early days that humanity's greatest weapon was forged, the quantum pulse drive, a piece of technology that could change the very nature of space travel. This device allowed ships to jump across the galaxy in a single bound, bypassing the need for traditional hyperdrive systems. It was a game changer. The quantum pulse drive was the key to humanity's success. It would allow them to move swiftly, striking where they were least expected, giving them the upper hand in battles they had no business winning. The first real test of humanity's new power came when the Council, noticing the rise of these new alliances, attempted to crush the movement before it could grow. A small faction of humanity's fleet was ambushed by a council-backed fleet in the Outer Rim, an area known for its lawlessness and lack of council influence. The battle was brutal, but humanity's forces held their ground, using their new technology and innovative tactics to outmaneuver the much larger council fleet. That battle marked a pivotal moment. Humanity's victory was no longer a fluke. The galaxy's elite powers had underestimated them, but now they couldn't ignore them. The victory was not just military, it was a symbol that humanity could fight back, that they weren't powerless, that they had the ability to not only challenge the Council, but to change the future of the galaxy. It was after that victory that the first serious discussions began. The Galactic Council, once dismissive and arrogant, now found themselves facing a problem they couldn't easily solve. Humanity had forced their hand. They were no longer the overlooked species they once were. They were a rising power, a force that would no longer accept the status quo. Humanity had done what no one thought possible. They had turned the tide. They had ignited a flame of rebellion that no amount of council power could extinguish. The once unthinkable idea of rewriting galactic law was no longer a distant dream. It was within reach. With each victory, humanity grew stronger. Their alliances deepened, their technologies advanced, and their influence spread like wildfire across the galaxy. And soon humanity's true plan was clear. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the galaxy's future, and they would reshape it in their own image. The galactic crisis, just as humanity's power began to rise, a new threat loomed over the galaxy, pushing humanity into a corner and forcing them to act faster than they ever anticipated. The Archons, a ruthless and ancient empire long thought to be extinct, had returned with a vengeance. The Council, entrenched in their endless debates and failures, remained frozen. This was no time for bureaucracy. The galaxy needed action. Now. And once again, humanity was the only species ready to step up. The Archons had come back stronger than ever, Their fleet, colossal and overwhelming, spread like a shadow over the galaxy. Their warships were massive, seemingly invulnerable, equipped with technology that bent the very laws of physics. Their ultimate goal was the complete annihilation of all that stood in their path, and they knew no mercy. Entire star systems fell under their brutal control as they advanced at a terrifying pace. The Galactic Council, having been more concerned with their internal squabbles and their long-established power structures, failed to recognize the true magnitude of the Archon's return. Instead of uniting to face this imminent threat, the Council spent precious time debating what should be done, pointing fingers and passing the responsibility around as the galaxy's defenses crumbled. The Archon's offensive continued unabated. The Outer Rim was ravaged first, followed by the more densely populated core systems. The warships of the Council's elite fleet, once thought unbeatable, were no match for the Archon's superior technology. And still, the Council's inaction continued. The idea of joining forces with humanity, a species they had rejected, was too much for their pride to bear. It was then that humanity, realizing that the galaxy could be lost if they didn't act, decided to take matters into their own hands. They could no longer sit back and wait for the Council to decide. Humanity's new fleet, now bolstered by the latest technological breakthroughs and a coalition of species that had previously been marginalized, sprang into action. General Lucas Duval, now a legendary figure in humanity's military ranks, gathered his commanders for the most crucial briefing of their lives. "The galaxy is on the brink of destruction," he said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of what was to come. "The Council won't act. We don't have the luxury of waiting for them anymore. We have the power, we have the allies, and most importantly, we have the resolve. We fight for the galaxy, for every species that was left behind. We fight because no one else will." With the Independence fleet at full readiness, humanity's forces struck first. They didn't have the sheer numbers of the Archons nor the massive ships that had once made the Council's fleet so formidable, but they had ingenuity and speed on their side. Humanity's ships, though smaller, were more agile, capable of faster strikes and evasions. They used their knowledge of the Archon's tactics to their advantage, luring the enemy into traps and overwhelming them with guerrilla warfare. The Galactic Crisis. Just as humanity's power began to rise, a new threat loomed over the galaxy, pushing humanity into a corner and forcing them to act faster than they ever anticipated. The Archons, a ruthless and ancient empire long thought to be extinct, had returned with a vengeance. The Council, entrenched in their endless debates and failures, remained frozen. This was no time for bureaucracy. The galaxy needed action. Now. And once again, humanity was the only species ready to step up. The Archons had come back stronger than ever. Their fleet, colossal and overwhelming, spread like a shadow over the galaxy. Their warships were massive, seemingly invulnerable, equipped with technology that bent the very laws of physics. Their ultimate goal was the complete annihilation of all that stood in their path, and they knew no mercy. Entire star systems fell under their brutal control as they advanced at a terrifying pace. The Galactic Council, having been more concerned with their internal squabbles and their long-established power structures, failed to recognize the true magnitude of the Archon's return. Instead of uniting to face this imminent threat, the Council spent precious time debating what should be done, pointing fingers and passing the responsibility around as the galaxy's defenses crumbled. The Archon's offensive continued unabated. The Outer Rim was ravaged first, followed by the more densely populated core systems. The warships of the Council's elite fleet, once thought unbeatable, were no match for the Archon's superior technology. And still, the Council's inaction continued. The idea of joining forces with humanity, a species they had rejected, was too much for their pride to bear. It was then that humanity, realizing that the galaxy could be lost if they didn't act, decided to take matters into their own hands. They could no longer sit back and wait for the Council to decide. Humanity's new fleet, now bolstered by the latest technological breakthroughs and a coalition of species that had previously been marginalized, sprang into action. General Lucas Duval, now a legendary figure in humanity's military ranks, gathered his commanders for the most crucial briefing of their lives. "The galaxy is on the brink of destruction," he said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of what was to come. "The Council won't act. We don't have the luxury of waiting for them anymore. We have the power, we have the allies, and most importantly, we have the resolve. We fight for the galaxy, for every species that was left behind. We fight because no one else will." With the Independence fleet at full readiness, humanity's forces struck first. They didn't have the sheer numbers of the Archons, nor the massive ships that had once made the Council's fleet so formidable, but they had ingenuity and speed on their side. Humanity's ships, though smaller, were more agile, capable of faster strikes and evasions. They used their knowledge of the Archons' tactics to their advantage, luring the enemy into traps and overwhelming them with guerrilla warfare. But the Archons were no ordinary enemy. They adapted quickly, and humanity soon found themselves in the fight of their lives. Every victory came at a steep price. Humanity's fleet was not large enough to win a direct confrontation. They would have to rely on their ability to outsmart the Archons, not outfight them. It was a strategy that would require sacrifices. As humanity battled, they knew that if they were to defeat the Archons, they had to go straight to the heart of their power, their homeworld, a mysterious planet hidden deep within the unknown reaches of space. The Archons had never shared their weaknesses, and no one had ever dared to attack their core. But humanity's leaders knew that without a bold strike, the galaxy was doomed. A plan was hatched, a daring raid that would send humanity's best ships straight into the heart of the Archon Empire. It was a suicide mission for many, but humanity didn't hesitate. They had seen the cost of inaction, and now they were willing to risk everything to ensure the galaxy's survival. As the fleet prepared to make the jump to the Archon homeworld, President Sofia Mendoza issued a call to arms. "We are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for everyone who has ever been cast aside, for everyone who has ever been silenced. This galaxy will be ours to protect, and we will not let the Archons take that from us." The first wave of humanity's ships moved swiftly, using the quantum pulse drive to outmaneuver the Archon's fleet. As they entered Archon space, they immediately found themselves surrounded by warships far larger and more advanced than their own. But the humans were determined. With calculated precision, they struck at the heart of the enemy, launching surprise attacks on the Archon flagship, using everything they had learned in their battle for survival. The result was a battle that no one saw coming. Humanity's fleet, despite being outgunned and outmatched, tore through the Archon defenses with the help of their allies, finding weaknesses in the enemy's seemingly impenetrable ships. The Archons were caught off guard, and, for the first time in centuries, their fleet began to fracture. The war was far from over, but humanity had made a decisive blow. The Archon's fleet was thrown into disarray, and their command ship was severely damaged. The damage was enough to stall their invasion, buying the galaxy crucial time to regroup. The news of humanity's daring raid spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Species that had once doubted them now recognized their strength. The Council, still unwilling to accept humanity's rise, could no longer deny the reality. Humanity was leading the charge. Humanity wasn't just a species to be dismissed. They were the leaders the galaxy needed in its darkest hour. The battle for the galaxy. The victory over the Archons was a turning point, but humanity knew that the true test was far from over. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted. Humanity had proven that they could take on an overwhelming force and win, but now, the stakes were higher than ever. The Archons' defeat had only delayed the inevitable. They would return, and there were still factions within the galaxy who saw humanity's rise as a threat. For the first time in a long time, the galaxy stood on the edge of a precipice, and no one knew which way it would fall. The Galactic Council, now in disarray, had no choice but to recognize humanity's growing influence. But their pride still held them back. The established powers of the galaxy, the species that had ruled for millennia, could not fathom a future where humanity played a central role. The Council's bureaucratic inertia was becoming its undoing. Instead of leading, they were reacting to a crisis they had ignored for too long, reacting to humanity's rise and reacting to the emergence of a new power that was no longer willing to be silent. As the remaining Archon forces began to regroup and recover from their defeat, the galaxy was faced with a choice: remain under the control of the Council, a council that had failed them, or follow humanity, a species that had shown they could not only survive but lead. Humanity's forces, now bolstered by allies from every corner of the galaxy, prepared for the final confrontation. General Lucas Duval knew that this battle would decide not just humanity's future but the future of every species that had chosen to stand with them. They could not allow the Council to continue its stranglehold on the galaxy. A new era had begun, and humanity would be at the helm. Duval stood in front of the Independence fleet, gazing at the vastness of space. Behind him, the fleet was prepared, ready to engage in the largest conflict the galaxy had ever seen. The stakes were higher than ever before. "This is it," Duval said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "We fight for the galaxy. We fight for a future where no species is pushed aside. We fight for a future where we are not ruled by the old powers. They tried to destroy us, to silence us, but now we will rewrite the rules of the galaxy." With those words, humanity's fleet moved into position. The Galactic Council, unable to organize its forces or make a decisive move, stood by as humanity, and its allies prepared for war. Humanity's message was clear. This was no longer the galaxy of the past. It was the galaxy of the future. The battle began in the asteroid fields of the Outer Rim, where humanity's smaller, more agile ships took advantage of their superior tactics. The Archons, though powerful, were slow to adapt, still reeling from the earlier defeat. Humanity's fleet, working in perfect coordination with their alien allies, struck quickly and decisively, launching waves of attacks that disoriented and outflanked the enemy. But as the battle progressed, the true scale of the Archons' might became clear. Their fleet was immense, their firepower devastating. Humanity's forces were still outnumbered, their ships vulnerable. The fight was brutal, and as the hours stretched into days, the loss of life mounted. Humanity's fleet had the advantage in maneuverability and strategy, but the Archons' warships were nearly indestructible, their technology beyond anything humanity had seen before. In the midst of the battle, President Sofia Mendoza sent out a call to all the galaxy's species. "This is not just our fight, this is a fight for the future of every being in this galaxy. Together, we can win. Together we will secure a future where all voices are heard, where no one is dismissed, where no one is forgotten." Her words reverberated across the galaxy, reaching species that had once been silent, species that had been pushed aside by the old powers. They rose to join the fight. The coalition of species, led by humanity, began to tip the balance of the battle in their favor. As more ships joined the fray, humanity's allies fought alongside them, unleashing wave after wave of assault on the Archon fleet. The climax of the battle came when humanity's most advanced warship, the Eagle, led a daring strike against the heart of the Archon fleet, their command ship. The Eagle and its accompanying ships made a perilous jump through the asteroid field, dodging enemy fire as they closed in on the command ship. This was their moment. Humanity's leaders knew that if they could take down the heart of the Archon fleet, the rest would crumble.